Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 12th of August. And joining me on this edition, Steve Withers.
Never get out of the boat.
And Ed Selley.
You understand, Captain, that this mission does not exist, nor ever exist.
A bit of a reduced capacity tonight. Unfortunately, Kaz never made it home in time for the podcast.
I mean, he's not dead or anything.
No, he just didn't make it for the podcast. And we thought we'd give him a bit of a break anyway. That boy just works non-stop. I don't know when he sleeps, to be honest. Maybe he doesn't sleep, I don't know. Maybe he's a robot from the future who's been sent back to review.
I've never met him. I mean, for all I know, he's actually plant-based and he just photosynthesizes instead.
I think he just sits in front of that bloody television with matchsticks propping his eyelids up, going through
I don't think he ever
series after another.
I don't think he ever sees daylight, to be honest, because all the photos I've seen have been in shadow as well.
That's true. Quite true.
So anyway, people that are here, Ed, what have you been up to this week?
It's big, if not necessarily event sort of exciting news, but for me it's great. After the events of the last sort of 18 months or so, I went to the Mortgage Man on Friday morning, and to no one's greater surprise than my own, it appears that at least one organisation is prepared to lend me a sum of money that will actually buy me something which is house-shaped rather than garage-shaped.
Right.
So I got to follow up on that, hope that, all the initial
And is
feedback.
this at an interest rate that you can afford to pay back, or is it astronomical?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Right,
This is the most extraordinary thing. In terms of, interest rates are absolutely in the toilet at the moment. I mean, I can do a 5-year fixed at sub 2%.
Yeah.
So no, it costs me far less to borrow in excess of £100,000 than it is to rent my one-bedroom shed. So, yeah,
is 100,000 grand enough?
100,000 grand is enough, Steve. No,
100,000 pounds. Sorry. Is that enough?
Essentially, I'm able to borrow a bit more than that, and yes, together with my existing equity, it's enough to buy a 2-bedroomed house.
Okay.
And that's about all that one can ask for in these inflationary times. So that's reasonably good news. So yeah, that's happened.
No, that's good news. Anything that gets you out of that place, because it's got to be like you were saying during the winter. And I noticed you've been spending quite a bit with your parents and stuff as well. It must be doing your head in staying in that little place, because I know it would do my head in. It's not
ideal. Do you know what? It's more the no phone line. So still having to actually pay attention to your internet usage. No postal address. I've done it for 15 months now, and I think I do want to be out of there before it gets cold again. So we'll see how that is. I've been down in Hampshire this weekend. I'm in Hampshire at the time of recording. That was pleasant enough. I haven't done a huge amount. I saw my brother, which is great. That's the second time this year, so we're doing very well.
I'm like that with my brothers as well. It's not unusual.
Well, there's no malice to it. We just we don't cross over that often. So that was all good. And I don't know. Also, obviously, Phil, you're you're now have different car priorities. But I was also heartened to know that having discovered I can now mortgage at the same time as the arse has fallen out of the lease market as well.
Yeah, but get your mortgage first.
Oh no! The lease is coming to an end in February. But that said, mortgage details I've given include paying what I do at the moment for the lease, so there's no sleight of hand. But no, the arse has fallen out. If you are in the process, if you were looking at these sort of things, certain things have lost £150 a month in their total costs since I last checked. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it hasn't quite hit the headlines just yet, but the car industry in this country, car sales and so on, a severe dip at the minute.
I think it's about to get a lot worse.
And it's likely to get a lot worse before it gets any better. But it's great if you're a buyer and you're in that market, but if you're on the other end and trying to sell stuff, I believe it's nigh on impossible.
I can imagine it's not much fun at the moment. No, I mean, let's face it, it's not like there's a bit of uncertainty going on. So,
but the major factor is that the biggest growth area, which is hybrids and electric, they've just fallen off a cliff in terms of sales. Right. Nobody's buying hybrids or electrics at all.
Why is that?
No idea. But it's the first time in, I think, 3 or 4 years of steady growth that it's just fallen off a cliff. So that points to the whole economy being nobody's investing at the minute. Nobody's making big ticket purchases at the minute. So.
Right. So it's not ideal, but no, as I say, it's been a relatively productive week. So I can't argue with how things have gone.
Excellent. So what have I been up to? This week, believe it or not, I've been reviewing TVs. Let me clarify that. Let me clarify that by saying I've reviewed everything, measured everything, and it's not just a case of sitting down for a day, looking at something and then writing a review, which I think a lot of people think is, oh, he's got that TV and I'll expect a review in 2 days. To do it properly, and we do it properly here, and we always have done, is it takes at least a week to 2 weeks to review something. If you've got 4 or 5 things on the go at once, you tend to be swapping between quite a few things, and we've gone from not just writing a review, which is the easy bit because they're all written up, but doing the videos as well, and the videos is what's taking the time at the minute, and we're still tweaking things a little bit. In terms of the videos. So the next video to go out, well, actually it'll be out while you're listening to the podcast. We've cut some sections out, and I want to see if people notice that there's been sections cut out and so on, and just to try and streamline the whole process and so on. So we want to try and get the best content out there. We want to try and get the best information out there. And I want to move on to other things like best settings and all that kind of thing as well. So this last week I have been spending time going through reviews, streamlining things, getting things reviewed, because I'm going on holiday and I can't move at the minute in this house, and I've got more TVs getting delivered this coming week, and I've run out of space. So I've been basically going through everything this week, getting it all measured, all reviewed, making sure everything's top and tailed, all packed up, and they're all getting picked up tomorrow. So, and then I've got a delivery coming on Tuesday. So for the space of maybe 8 hours, I'm going to have room again in my living room before it's filled up with more TVs. But there's stuff that I haven't seen yet. So the C9 is finally turning up, and it's staying as a long-termer. So it's a 65-incher as well. So I've got the 65-inch Q90R. So the obvious thing there is some side-by-side reviews and side-by-side videos and all that kind of thing. So yeah, this week I've been absolutely blitzing through everything, making sure I've got everything done, everything measured and all the rest of it, and all packed up and up for collection on Monday, hopefully. It's amazing how much room these things take. Well, I don't need to tell you, Steve, but it is amazing how much room these boxes take up, because you only need to get 4 or 5 TVs in, and you can't move for boxes, basically. So it'd be nice to have 8 hours of when I can move.
8 hours of free dancing, followed by returning to...
Well, you'd be spending that 8 hours of sleep anyway. So.
Probably.
Much irrelevant.
Well, I've got... Actually, it's saying that I've got a TV turning up tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning, so I'm going to have to get up early to receive that delivery. But that's an AG9. What have you been doing, Steve?
Not dissimilar to you, actually. I got the Panasonic GZ950 in, which is basically the same as the GZ1500 you were talking about last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Basically the same picture quality and everything else, just cosmetics and soundbar. It hasn't got a soundbar, basically. But otherwise, so I've been playing around with that quite a bit. And really, really enjoying it. I think it's a fantastic TV, and the picture quality is absolutely amazing. So I was well pleased with that. And mucking around with some sound bars, one of which I'm about to talk about in a few minutes, which nearly killed me. It's the size of a small car. I got. I'm a fan of. I think most of us probably are, but I'm a big fan of the film Alien. And a new book's just come out called The Making of Alien. It's written by the same guy that did things like The Making of Star Wars, The Making of The Empire Strikes Back. They're basically huge coffee table sized books that really go into detail about the making of the film, like going from inception, screenplay, production, includes lots of photographs, of on-set photographs, paintings and little Ridley-grams, all this sort of stuff. And it's really interesting reading about the making of that film. So I've been dipping into that when I get a minute. That's about it really. Otherwise, a bit of telly, the odd film.
Bit of telly, yeah.
Bit of telly, yeah.
Well, it has been. It's been telly weather though this week, hasn't it? Really.
Well, yeah. I've had little inclination to go outside the front door unless I absolutely had to.
Yeah, I mean it's like autumn up here already. I think winter will be
done.
soon.
I think we're done with summer.
Yeah, I think so. I think
we've
had it. Right, so that's what we've all been getting up to over the last week or so, and competition time. Ed, why don't you tell us what we could win?
Oh, all right then. Right, you can win a copy of Domino on Blu-ray. Obviously, you may have listened to our enthusiastic review of it last week.
I described last week as well. I haven't watched it yet. I sort of lost interest in watching it after the Kansas review.
But nevertheless, Domino is out on Blu-ray. That's out until the 20th of August. You can win a Bowers & Wilkins Formation wedge worth £900. The review for that is now up, obviously. You go until the 24th of August for that. Now, as a competition prize, we said it was a bit on the spendy side, but competition prize, you can't say that's a banger of a prize. £100 to spend with MPB, the platform for trading camera gear online. That's open until the 10th of September. Win copies of Criterion's August titles on Blu-ray. That's Kiss Me Deadly, Clute, Do the Right Thing. That's until the 26th of September. And win a copy copy of Batman Hush on Blu-ray, which is also open through 26th of August. Competitions are open to eligible AVForums members resident in the UK. Basically, it's everyone except Phil, which is good. Right, and there are some previous winners as well. So stand by your bets. Parryade wins the Dali Catch portable speaker. So well done to them. Nat the Gooner won a copy of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn on Blu-ray, and Stiggy won a copy of Lost in Space, the complete first season on Blu-ray. So my congrats to all of you people, and I hope you enjoy your fabulous prizes.
Yeah, great prizes, but Kaz was right last week. I mean, Lost in Space, you would have thought they would have done a 4K HDR disc if they were going to launch it on disc. Steve.
I think that's deliberate because they don't want to take people away from watching it on Netflix.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right.
Yeah, because you think, it's shot in 4K, it's finished in 4K, it's in Dolby Vision on Netflix, Dolby Atmos. So,
yeah.
Okay, so that's our competitions. That's what we've been up to. We'll be back in a sec with hardware reviews. Okay, so moving on to hardware reviews. All three of us are talking about reviews this week, and Steve's going to go first. Steve, what have you been reviewing? I bet it's a soundbar.
Yeah, it is a soundbar, and it's possibly the biggest soundbar I reviewed today. I don't have the Yamaha YSP 5600 to hand to compare, because that's also quite big. But I had the Sennheiser Ambeo, which is an absolute beast of a soundbar. And that's definitely an issue because I couldn't see it. It blocked the telly screen. It was so big that it blocked the screen of the C8 I've got in the lounge. It's slightly better with the GZ950 because that's got a bit more distance, but even then it still blocks screen. It's massive. And that means you're either going to have some sort of stand that is much lower than where the TV screen is in order to fit it in front of the telly. You can't really put it inside a stand because obviously you need to keep the top clear for the upward firing drivers. Or you have to wall mount it, and at 18.5 kilograms, you better have a bloody good
sturdy wall mount time.
Yeah, I mean, and also the mount is optional. It's not like it comes in the box. You've got to pay for that. Yes, it's big. It's not just big in terms of size. It's big in terms of price. It's 2,200 quid. Now that's for a soundbar. No separate subwoofer, although in fairness it goes deep for a soundbar. I mean, Sennheiser claim it can go down to 30 hertz, and I could believe that. It does sound good. You don't think to yourself, well, I'm missing a sub here. It does sound deep. Given the size of it, that's not massively surprising, but it's still a soundbar, and whilst it does include some very cool technology to create an immersive experience and effectively bounce sounds off the sidewall to give you some sort of rear effect and that sort of stuff. The reality is you could buy a pretty good AVR and speaker package for 2,200 quid. So it's going to have to be good. And it is good. I mean, sound quality wise, this is a fantastic soundbar. I mean, it's too big for most people, I suspect, and certainly too expensive, but it does sound great. It's got, I think it's got, how many drivers has it got in total? I think it's got 15 drivers in total. 3 at the front, composed of 2 woofers and a tweeter, so that's 9 at the front. 2 side drivers, and then 2 upper firing drivers as well. And it uses Sennheiser's Ambeo technology to create that sense of immersion. So effectively, obviously with the upward firing drivers, it's bouncing sounds off the ceiling. That's pretty much par for the course. And with the side firing drivers, it's trying to bounce sounds off the sidewalls and again off the rear walls to create a sense of immersion and width. Not dissimilar. I mean, that's basically exactly what the YSP 5600 does. Unlike that soundbar, though, I mean, Sennheiser have at least thought this through in terms of it supports Dolby Atmos and DTS-X. It also supports MPEG-H, which is a format I'm not massively familiar with, but apparently it's very popular in Asia. And it has EARC. It passes Dolby Vision. I don't know about HDR10 Plus. I'm going to check that out probably on Tuesday because now I've got a TV that supports HDR10 Plus as well. I can check that out and see if it does pass it through. But certainly it ticks all the boxes. It's got 3 HDMI inputs, which isn't, it's got a decent number of HDMI inputs. Nothing like the number you'd get from an AVR, but for a soundbar, that's quite good. So they've done a lot of things. You think, okay, they've thought about this. It comes with a microphone. It's basically like a thin pole on a base, and you stick it at the sweet spot, and it runs test tones and takes measurements to set itself up. Again, that works really well. So performance-wise and features-wise, I have absolutely no complaints. I think it sounds great. It looks attractive, aside from the fact that it's enormous, and it delivers in terms of what you want from a modern soundbar. But 2,200 quid is a lot of money.
Yeah. Steve, do you think it's a? I mean, has Sennheiser intimated that there might be more of these? I mean, is this a sort of? Do you think this is a way of establishing some level of presence in a market they haven't previously been in by going balls out?
They've certainly gone hell for leather in terms of, I mean, obviously Sennheiser, you're going to think headphones, I guess, and microphones and things like that. But the Ambeo technology has been around for a while now. It's been in, I think they've included it in a couple of other products before. Was it there was an Ambeo microphone, obviously, and an Ambeo headset that they'd released. But this is their first sort of a sound product that uses the technology, and it is effective, I have to say, in terms of creating it, much like what Yamaha's sound projector technology, which they use to create that sense of immersion from a single soundbar. This does work, and I think they've obviously decided they're going to come out of the gates with a big statement product, and I mean big, literally in this case. And in that sense, it works. It's certainly a statement. I mean, as a technological statement, there's no question this is impressive. It's beautifully made. It's very well made, very well built. It's solid. It's beautifully constructed. It's got all the features you'd want from a soundbar, a modern soundbar. It delivers a cracking performance. But there is no getting around the fact that it is bloody expensive. And I guess that comes down to personal preference. If you want a really good no holds barred soundbar, and you don't want to put a 5.1 system in your lounge, and you don't want an AVR, and you've got the room for this, because bear in mind, you're going to have the room up front for it. It's not like it's inconspicuous. Then go for it if you've got the money and you're happy with that. I just think that a lot of people would balk at the price and look for alternatives.
How tall is it?
It is. Let me just check the measurements for you. 135 millimeters high.
Right, so that really is quite tall, because
that's like nearly 3 times the height of some of the slimline stuff you get nowadays.
Yeah,
it's interesting that there are some other publicity shots of it online where it is clearly obscuring the bottom part of the picture of the television it's been put.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking about all the TVs I've had through so far, and all of them have new stands that are. The only one I can think of was the Sony AG8. You could have it really low, or you could turn the stand round the other way, and it raised the stand up an inch and a half. Everything else is really quite low this year.
Well, not just this year. There's been a trend towards that. I'm struggling to think of a TV I've seen in the last few years that you could actually comfortably stick this in. I mean, you can't just plonk it in front of a TV. It's going to block the screen. Yeah, you have to have it on some sort of...
So you're going to have to get a Visa stand, basically, and do something that way where you can raise the height of your screen so you get nice and flush, basically, is what you're saying.
That's basically one. Yeah, that would be the easiest and cheapest solution, I suspect, would be to do exactly that. Yeah, certainly if you use the stand the TV comes with, the chances are this is going to block the screen. But yeah, that's actually not a bad idea, because I suspect that would be a lot cheaper than buying. I don't know what the price is. I have to look that up, but I suspect that would probably be cheaper than buying Sennheiser's dedicated mount for the soundbar. And obviously at 18.5 kilograms, you want to make sure you've got a nice sturdy wall to put it on. It's going to have to be a load-bearing wall for that to be a possibility. Yeah. I had a similar issue. I mean, to be fair, I had a similar issue with the wired P5600 from Yamaha when I reviewed that a few years ago. It was a cracking sounding and very capable soundbar, but it was bloody big, and that also didn't come with a subwoofer either. So that had a similar issue. So I guess performance-wise, no question, it sounds fantastic. And even though it doesn't have a sub, like I say, it does go pretty deep. And I didn't feel myself thinking, that's really missing a subwoofer. Partly because of its sheer physical size, they could put a lot of drivers in there and a lot of power too. So I think it delivers a big front sound stage, and there is a degree of immersion, and it's not the same as having rear speakers. No, I don't care what anyone says, isn't it? I mean, I could play something like the Amaze trailer or the Rainfall demo on the Dolby Atmos demo disc. And there's no question the sounds emanating from above you. Obviously, again, caveat here is that you need a ceiling that's going to bounce the sounds back down again. If you've got a vaulted ceiling, this ain't the soundbar for you, or any of these kind of soundbars isn't for you. But if you've got the right kind of ceiling, I've got a good reflective ceiling in my lounge, then that works really well. So the rain's emanating from above. It's much further across the room than it has been. A lot of other soundbars I've tested, the sound stage is very much at the front of the room, first third of the room, and that's it.
This is Steve gently breaking us into the concept that he has mirrored ceilings in all of his rooms.
But this definitely brings the sound further into the room than other soundbars I've tested recently, which is good. But it's not going to. If you compare it to say the Samson HW Q950R, which is $1,500, which has got actual rear speakers with upward firing drivers, that's far more immersive, and it's a lot cheaper. So I still think that would be my preferred choice. But it looks and sounds fantastic. It's very big and it's very expensive.
I've seen a lot of hype online from other reviews and so on.
Yeah, you think it was
this is the best soundbar ever. Is it the best soundbar ever?
If we discount on technical terms the ones that come with that are essentially home center.
If you put it up against, if you just as a soundbar, so forgetting subwoofers and rear speakers, it certainly sounds fantastic. It's certainly up there as one of the best sounding single unit soundbars I've ever heard, if not the best single unit soundbar I've ever heard. But I do think that if you really want immersive audio, if you want Atmos and DTSX delivered properly, then you need to have rear speakers. Otherwise, it's just all at the front of the room. And there's nothing they can they can bring it out a bit more. They can apply some psychoacoustic processing. They can bounce it off walls and ceilings and whatever. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to replace having both a set of speakers at the rear and a set of upward firing drivers at the rear to really genuinely immerse you. Yeah. It sounds great, but that's a hefty price tag.
And I was kind of put off by a lot of the hype that was out there. I'm thinking, no, it can't possibly be what's being described there. I mean, I get it. It's good, like you say, second coming. No, I suppose with the a soundbar that size, you could use it with a projector quite successfully, couldn't you?
That would be actually with a projector. Yes, it would be. I'm assuming if you're going to go for a projector, you might want to have a full system. But yeah, if for some reason, an AVR and speaker package isn't viable, this is the kind of thing that would definitely work well with a projector screen, because it's big, and literally because it's big. It can deliver a very big front sound stage, and it would more than be big enough to handle even a large projector screen.
So we could set it up and use it with a BenQ W2700.
Nice segue. Yeah, you could.
You could, couldn't you? Because it's under £2,000. It's actually
it's less than Sennheiser.
It's less than the Sennheiser, and it is probably one of the best budget projectors I've seen for a while. And let me put the caveats around that it's a DLP projector. It's a 4K DLP projector which uses the 0.47 inch DMD.
Full flashing.
So its actual resolution is 1920 by 1080, but it flashes or it quadruples that to give you the 8.3 million pixels, and it does it lightning fast, so your eye doesn't see it. And then obviously it uses a RGB color wheel as well for the colors. They've been coated, and there is also a filter in the light path that BenQ have added to this to try and widen out the color. For wide colour, for use with UHD Blu-rays. Now, the one thing that's always been an issue with projectors is HDR, and it's still an issue here because this projector struggles to get 70 nits peak brightness. No, peak brightness isn't everything, and I keep repeating this over and over again when it comes to TV reviews and everything else, that your peak brightness number is only one number. Everything else that goes around it has an impact, and the main thing is dynamic tone mapping makes a big impact. So you might put a 10% window up and measure 700 nits on a TV. That doesn't mean that every time there's a 10% window or 10% of the image is white that you're going to get 700 nits. It's completely meaningless. But in that respect, that's how bright the TV can go with that size of white on the screen. But when it comes to actually showing content, the TV is tone mapping, and each manufacturer does it differently depending on the capabilities of their TVs when it comes to static metadata. Dynamic metadata, a completely different thing, which we'll discuss. It's not important here. You're going to be using static metadata, even if you put in a Dolby Vision disc into this player. It's going to defer back to the HDR10 layer. Yes, it only gets 70 nits peak brightness when you measure it in the most accurate mode on a 10% window. I was using the projector at 80 inches at that point, and I did that on full zoom and also on the least amount of zoom. Is exactly the same. There wasn't any difference when it came to the light output in that respect with an 80-inch screen. So it was easy enough for me to measure that rather than using the full screen. I could measure that and then do the results, and people can extrapolate the results for their rooms from those figures. Now, what I want to get around here is that for a DLP projector, that's really quite poor when it comes to brightness. But again, we're not taking that one figure, you're taking in the tone map and everything else, and what it does really well is it really does a good job of tone mapping the image. So when you actually watch an HDR film, it doesn't look like it's only doing 70 nits of peak brightness. It actually looks really quite bright, because obviously it's doing its own tone mapping. It's assessing it on a scene-by-scene basis, and it's really quite clever what BenQ are doing with their projector there. The other thing that really knocked me out, and I know Steve's also looked at the model up from this, the 5700, is the black levels. Now, DLP has never been good for black levels. Always struggled. It's always a light grey colour. But I was really impressed. Now, I'm not saying that this projector has inky deep black. It's not great, but for a DLP projector, it is a big step up for a DLP projector.
I'd say that the W5700 that I had for a single chip DLP projector, I mean, not thinking about the sort of the 3-chip 30, 40 grand models, but at this price point, easily the best one I've ever seen.
Yeah,
by a long way.
Yeah, and the 2700, it's a lower model down, but again, in terms of black levels, I think it's just more of a design. There's a little bit more power, a little bit more lumens on the one that you looked at. It's designed a little bit better in terms of airflow as well, because it's centrally mounted lens. It's
got a nicer looking chassis, isn't it? Looks more like a sort of a high end product you'd want in a home cinema. Yeah. I mean, definitely the W5700 is aimed at the custom install market more so than the one you have, which I think is but the difference in price isn't massive, because the W5700 is, I think, 2,400 quid.
Yeah.
And I got to say, for that money, absolute stocking bargain.
Yeah. No, like I say, it's the best DLP projector I've seen under £2,000. Absolutely, without a doubt. There are caveats to that, because there always is. There's no such thing as a perfect display, and there's lots of things that it's not that great at. One of the things was syncing to the image. So sometimes I was getting a split down the middle of the screen, and one side of the screen was nice and warm, and one side of the screen was a different colour tone altogether, and you had to restart it again or resync it to get it to click in. Now, that could just be this is a review sample.
I didn't have
it's been
that
around a few
problem on
times.
mine, I have to say, so it might just be a duffy.
So it might just be an issue with this one as well. The other thing is that these are allegedly pre-calibrated in the factory. So what they're doing there is obviously the software is working out from a point what the white balance should be and so on. The way that they've worked this is that you have to have the dynamic iris on for it to reach what they're saying it will reach. If you switch the dynamic iris off, it's all over the place basically when it comes to measurements, which had me stumped for a little bit, because I switched the dynamic iris off, switched the true color off and so on, and was getting quite unusual results. But when I switched them all back on, I was getting what I was expecting to get. But the problem there is that when I was taking measurements in terms of gamma and so on, you were getting some strange results with gamma because of the dynamic iris. So,
which is also quite noisy.
Yeah. So it wasn't quite perfect there. But again, I mean, out of the box with the dynamic iris on, looking at the grayscale, I mean, I was getting errors under 4, mostly under 3, and mostly under 3 in the main areas of the image. So from about 70% brightness downwards, it was under 3 delta E error-wise. It was just brighter areas.
Yeah, on mine they were all under 3, which is, they did say, well, because it comes with, did yours come with a little certificate?
Yeah, they're all the same, because I've had two 2700s in, because the first one wasn't working correctly. And
I might have a few quality control issues there.
And I think it's just review samples, Steve. You know, it's like these things go around absolutely everywhere, and so on. But yeah, I've got to say that to get it calibrated, the calibration controls were useless, unfortunately. They didn't have the impact that I was expecting them to have. I managed to get the grayscale under 3 apart from 100% white, and 9 I did even adjust in contrast and all sorts. I couldn't get rid of that error. It was 4 delta E, and it wasn't going to budge there at all. But it was reasonably flat in terms of that. But then when we move on to HDR, that's where the issues were. And of course, it's a projector. We're not expecting HDR to be.
How did it measure against DCI-P3? Because on the one I had, it was given that until recently DLP would struggle to even reach Rec 709. The one I had actually hit DCI-P3 really well, really accurately.
So if you're taking gamut coverage, so you're just taking the 100% points, which Kalman does when you measure the gamut coverage. So the gamut coverage, XY was 92%, UV was 94%, which for a DLP is excellent. But actually, if you go and look at the saturation charts, so if you move to the actual saturation sweeps from 100% down to 25% within the P3 gamut, it's there are some points that are way off, like magenta's miles off where it should be for the entire track. Cyan isn't where it should be, and so on. This is important because you never get 100% of a colour. On any content you look at. So what you should be looking at is 75% below, and it's not great at that. But then it's under £2,000 projector. It's a DLP single chip. I wasn't expecting it to blow me away there. To be honest,
what impressed me was, despite the fact that it wasn't native 4K, the technology, repeating the image 4 times to create the 4K image, and in fact, obviously, it's a single chip. And a reasonably good lens meant that it was quite sharp and detailed, but it was blooming noisy. Was yours noisy?
Yes, it was noisy.
Very noisy.
So that's one of the things that you're gonna have to think of. But BenQ has always been popular with AVForums members. They've always given a certain level of performance. The only thing here is, like I say, peak luminance, peak white was 70 candelas per meter squared, or 70 nits. Black was 0.035, which overall gives you a contrast of 2032 to 1. So it's not the brightest projector out there. But again, it's under £2,000. It's a DLP 4K. The 4K works incredibly well. It works really well with the 820 player, the Panasonic 820 player, by using the HDMI optimizer. That did improve things, and it made things look really quite nice, because obviously the player then does a lot of the tone mapping. It takes it away from the projector, so the projector's not working as hard, and that really makes a big difference. Overall, I'm really, really impressed with it. For the money, for the performance that you're getting for the money, it'd be easy as a reviewer to say, well, it's not as good as a JVC, but the JVC is like £7,000, for
the N5 is what is that? That's $6,000, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's
3 times the price.
It's quite a jump, and it doesn't pretend to be that. But what it isn't is what a lot of these 4K DLP projectors are, and what they're marketed as is home entertainment projectors. I would say that this is actually one that I'd be quite happy to sit and watch films on a dedicated screen in a dark room. I think it holds up really quite well for a 4K DLP, whereas the other models that we've reviewed up to this point, they have been more of an all-rounder machine. So, I think BenQ really have moved things on. I like the fact they're doing the calibration thing. All I would ask them to do is to do a set of, within the software, to do a set without the dynamic iris being involved. I'd like to calibrate it natively and see what that's like. And if they're doing a dynamic iris, why not introduce a adjustable iris? So you can manually adjust it and close it off to what you want, so you've got a more consistent image. Because you did see the iris move now and again.
You can hear the iris moving.
And you can hear it moving as well if it's right next to your head. Positioning, again, noise-wise and so on. But really, really impressed. So well done, BenQ. It's a cracking little machine, and I'm looking forward to seeing the 5700.
It's good to see manufacturers, putting emphasis and marketing their projector on the basis of its image accuracy. nice to see that.
Well, it's nice to see that that's happening across the industry, actually, with TVs and so on as well. It's nice to see people moving that way. And all we ask, really, at the end of the day, is that there's one or two settings that get close to the industry standards. We're not saying do away with vivid mode or bright mode or whatever. We're just saying give people the opportunity to have something that gets accurate. And it's nice to see that, they're doing that. So that's the BenQ W2700. The review will be up soon for that one, along with a video. And Ed's going to close out the reviews with a new Naim product.
Yes, this comes hot on the heels of the Wedge, Bowers & Wilkins Wedge that's now up on the site we discussed last week. And it's the biggest problem for the Wedge, in my opinion. It's Naim's Mu-So second generation. Now, we reviewed the first Mu-So back in 2014 when it came out. The price has gone up. It was £800. It's now £1,200, which makes it more expensive than the Bowers & Wilkins out of the box. But the devil is in the detail with this one. Where the Bowers is dependent on AirPlay, or if you want to actually access high res, you have to go in for Roon with the cost attendant to that. The Naim is built on the same streaming platform as all the other Naim products we've looked at over the last 2 years. So the Unity products, the ND5XS, it is, in my, I suppose, reasonably solid experience, one of the best manufacturer systems out there. And with that, you get UPnP streaming from NAS drives. It is Roon compatible as well if you want to use Roon, but you don't have to. It's got AirPlay 2. It's got Bluetooth. It's got Chromecast. It just has features that are sort of expensive or impossible to replicate with the Wedge. It then adds to that by starting to make a nuisance of itself with the sort of arty soundbar market, because it has a single HDMI ARC connector. Now, that's not going to set the world on fire compared to the Ambeo that Steve was talking about earlier and some of the more dedicated devices. This is neither here nor there. Thing is, though, people who follow me on Twitter may have noticed this. One of the reasons I wanted to come down this weekend is that I have, not without a degree of trepidation, I have installed a Mu-So second generation, and he's got one of the LG the LG LCD that you liked for this generation. So it's a nice one. You simply can't fit a 55-inch OLED into the corner, so it had to be a 49-inch LCD.
All right, fair enough.
I have to say, I've been quite impressed. The picture, from my utterly, unjudgmental perspective, it seems to be perfectly all right. It's certainly come on a long way from LCD televisions I've looked at a long time ago. And the thing is, it obviously there is no attempt at false surround or immersive surround. But I tell you what, it's a damn good listen for both music and for TV work. If you're buying it primarily as an audio device, as a music device, you'd be surprised at just how decent it is at boosting the sound of a television. The other thing is, I'm delighted, and it has to be said, not a little relieved in light of the fact that, I have left it with my parents. It has actually it does all the things it's supposed to do. And people picked up on this with the Unity products, the HDMI ARC connection. If you listen to some music and turn your Unity off, and then you turn your television on, your Unity won't automatically detect a signal on the HDMI input. So you actually have to turn it on, select HDMI, and then it will lurch into life. Naim have obviously paid attention to this. If you turn your telly on, the Mu-So will just turn on, link up, and away it goes. Volume control is obviously on the television volume as well. It's a proper, well dealt with HDMI ARC connection. And it's all, I'm delighted to say, it just works. And aside from the minor detail that my father has elected to decide to rip his CD collection using iTunes, which is essentially like trying to eat a tureen of soup with a fork. But I tried to dissuade him from doing it. I can't. He's on his way. In case you've been hearing noises in the background, that's him wandering in and out, ripping stuff. But the Naim to me does all of the things that it finishes where I felt the Wedge raised questions about its value and about the functionality that they've elected to do. the Mu-So doesn't have that. It isn't a cheap product. It's £1,300, but the feature set just feels far more comprehensive. And this is where it gets awkward. I've run some tests. Now, since I've written the review for the Mu-So second generation, Naim has announced that there's the Mu-So QB second generation, so the smaller cuboid shaped one is being changed as well. But I've done some multi-room testing with the Mu-So QB and my first generation Mu-So QB and the Mu-So second generation. I've done some side-by-side tests with the Wedge and the Duos. I don't doubt for a second that Bowers and Wilkins' solution is technically better than Naim's. But in a normal domestic situation, I can't tell the difference. There's no latency issues with Naim's system. It works just as reliably. It just functions. So I'm sure that once you start to really pile on the rooms, the Bowers system will work better, not least because the Naim system is limits to 4 devices, whatever you try and do. But equally, none of these are cheap products. I mean, four rooms of either of them is not exactly going to be money you find down the back of the sofa. So my gut feeling is the Wedge is an excellent product, but the Naim is the better one. And a few of you listening will go, well, yeah, but you're obviously going to say that because you like Naim, and I make no bones about the fact that I do. But viewed objectively, for the £400, for the £300 more, it does more. It does it more effectively, more cohesively, and with more options to the end user. I think it is comfortably the better product.
Okay, there we go. So lots of reviews this week, and you can find all of those reviews up on the website at some point this following week after you listen to the podcast. So we're moving on to movies next. Okay, so moving on to the film section of the podcast, and film review-wise this week, Naim, because there's absolutely nothing.
There is a film out that I do want to see. We didn't mention it last week,
right.
But I'm going to go and see it on Wednesday when I go and see Once Time in Hollywood, which is Blinded by the Light, which I'm a big Springsteen fan, so a film full of Springsteen.
I saw that reviewed on Kermode. It wasn't Kermode, actually. It was the other guy, King, wasn't it? But I saw that review
James
and I thought,
King,
that looks interesting.
No, look, I saw the trailer and I thought, oh, I quite fancy that. And I am a big Springsteen fan, and it's set in the 80s. So basically, I'm in with that. So I thought I'd do a double bill on Wednesday and see that.
Right, okay.
And also what is opening.
Yeah, so I mean, the first one I should talk about is coming out on Tuesday. It's just the one day, 30th of August, limited screenings in IMAX, and that's Apocalypse Now, the final cut. Have you got your ticket, Ed?
No.
I'm
mainly
surprised
because on Tuesday, the 13th of August, I am here in Hampshire, and I'm house sitting, so my parents' cats don't run away.
All right, okay. What a shame, because it's going to look.
I'm sure. Look, it's going to look amazing, but I've got cats to look after. And to be honest, it still requires me to go to a cinema, and it will be. No disrespect. I know that obviously both of you are going, and I'm about to say this. I don't like going to the cinema at the best of times, but fan showings, because for every person that sits there in respectful silence, there'll be someone doing the words. Or other things.
I haven't found that at all going into
to
this
kill
house.
them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid the last time I went to see Apocalypse Now at the cinema, it was a.
You kind of judge everything on the one screen, right? I think
no, but I have
want to
seen
see more
other
of this.
fan showings as well. I just, for whatever reason, I've had dismal luck with them. And as I said, I'm in rural Hampshire. It's not the place for high quality cinema screens, I'm afraid.
I'd really like to see more of this, because I really enjoy going to the cinema to see older films. And the thing with Apocalypse Now is I don't think I've seen it in about 15 years.
I've never seen it at the cinema, that's for sure.
And I've certainly never seen it at the cinema, no, because it was 79.
I have seen it in the cinema. I'm delighted to say that. So,
yeah.
I'm intrigued. Steve, you must. What is this final cut different from Redux?
Yes, it's shorter.
Right, so it's
because
not...
Redux is basically he threw everything in.
Is everything,
and some of it was pointless. Like for example, in the original cut, after the ride of the Valkyrie attack, when Kilgore does the speech about I love the smell of napalm in the morning, his last line is "Someday this war is going to end."
Yeah.
And that's the last time you see or hear from Kilgore. And it's a fantastic, it's just the perfect
Whereas
ending for that
nicking his
character.
surfboard and him running
Yes,
around.
in the longer cut, they do something that's completely out of character, particularly for Willard, where they steal his surfboard, which Willard wouldn't do. He's a serious guy on a serious mission. He wouldn't muck about stealing surfboards. And you got Kilgore looking for them in a helicopter trying to get his surfboard back. It ruined. I hated that scene, and hopefully that scene's gone. But the scene that is there, that I'm sure you'll be delighted at, is that they still kept the French plantation sequence.
Well, the French plantation scene is extremely important. The only thing is, it probably needs subtitles.
There's some very thick French accents in that scene.
It does, and but it's all very well to say, is it a spoiler to discuss this? In light of the fact it's on YouTube?
Well, it's a 40th anniversary.
Because essentially it is the confirmation from another source that Kurtz, whilst off his face, is indisputably correct. Both conversations, the conversations that the French guys have over food and the conversation that Kurtz has over will and, the determination to do things... It's the mirror. It's the confirmation of both those, but it probably could benefit from having some subtitles. I suspect.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's out on Tuesday. There was still some spaces on the screen when I got my ticket the other night, so
it's a bit of a schlep for me to get to you there.
Yeah. But what I'm suggesting there is that there are screens out there. If people still want to get tickets, even on a Monday when they're listening to the podcast, they might be able to get tickets. And it is IMAX. It should be a fantastic presentation.
Yeah, please be aware that obviously it was shot on 35mm. It's not shot in IMAX.
Yeah.
But it was always designed by Coppola to be a big event, roadshow kind of film. So seeing it on the biggest screen possible and with the best sound possible was always his intention.
Yeah.
So I think this will do justice to his artistic.
And it's interesting that up here it's only an IMAX up here. You can't go to a regular showing of it. So it is only an IMAX showing.
Mm.
Well, no other film I know. I mean, this sounds a perverse and obvious thing to say given the length of it, but no other film I know fit. Honestly, when the boat gets to the compound, you genuinely feel that you've been with those people for a week, and I don't know of any film that quite has that ability. I mean, the time in running time, the time between the helicopter attack on the village and the arrival at the compound is quite long, but it manages to feel as a passage of time without dragging. It has felt longer. You feel that you've been with them for longer. You felt that they have descended into madness quite effectively in that time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's great. I have some regrets. I mean, but I'll be looking after some kids.
Well, I'm sure we'll
Blu-ray in 2 weeks later anyway. So.
And I'm sure we'll discuss it on the next podcast once we've seen it, and we'll discuss it again further. Right. Also coming out this week, so I'm going to the cinema on Tuesday. I'm also going to the cinema on Wednesday because we got the 9th film from Quentin Tarantino. It's being reviewed.
9th if you count Kill Bill as a single film.
Right. Yeah,
which he does, but it'd be nice if he released it as a single film then, if that's the case.
Yeah, but anyway, it's being reviewed incredibly well, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I don't generally rely on film critic reviews, but I don't know what to expect from this one, which I guess is a good thing.
Is going to depend on 3 things: A, whether you like Tarantino, because he is an acquired taste. I
love Tarantino,
but if you like Tarantino, I think you'll probably enjoy it. I think it also is going to immeasurably help if you are reasonably au fait with Hollywood and the way films work, and particularly the Hollywood of the late 60s. And also, you really need to know about the Sharon Tate murders, because I suspect if you don't, it won't make a lot of sense at all. So, yeah. So if you are unfamiliar with, say, Charles Manson and the Manson family and the Sharon Tate murders, it might be good to read up on that before you see the movie.
Yeah, or watch a YouTube video on it, which is.
I'm sure there's documentaries on YouTube.
I'm sure there is. Yeah. That's 2 long nights for me because that's 2 hours 41, and Apocalypse Now.
I think it's about the same.
Right, it's going to be 2.
3. I think Apocalypse Now might be about 3 hours actually.
Yes, that's too long.
And I think the IMAX screening also includes a Q&A, a recorded, not a live Q&A with Coppola. and I think Steven Soderbergh. So
All right.
could be an even longer screening than that.
No, that's a 2 a.m. getting in the door.
Yeah, I won't be getting home till bloody late on that night. So I'm in Cardiff.
Oh, you're going to Cardiff this year. At least the roads will be clear on the way back anyway.
Yeah, there'll be traffic.
Another one which caught my attention is coming out this week, and it caught my attention because it was going to pass me by until I watched the trailer, and I was laughing out loud at the trailer. It's from the team that brought Superbad and so on. It's about 3 6th grade boys who they're trying to get to a party. And it's one of these where they bump into different people along the way and they learn things, and they're really quite naive young.
Sounds like Superbad, but with younger kids.
Yeah, basically that's what it is. And it's the trailer's actually hilarious. Now it could be that all the best bits are in the trailer or whatever, but if nothing else is taking your fancy, it might be worthwhile having a look at the trailer for that and going along and seeing that. That's out on Friday, and it's called Good Boys. So. And I think Seth Rogen's got something to do with it as well.
Yeah, he produced it.
Did he? Right. So there you go. So it's got a good pedigree behind it, so it might actually be worthwhile going to see. So that's the cinema wrapped up. 4K disc-wise, Steve.
We got Shazam! Exclamation marks, presumably it's Shazam!
I love that.
That's supposed to be very good, is it?
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I really, really enjoyed it.
It made me feel like I was sitting in the cinema in the 90s. You know, it was one of them sort of carefree vibe to it. It just had a really nice feeling to it for a superhero movie, and
it's really funny.
It's really, really funny. Yeah, nice characters.
Good villain from the great Mark Strong.
Yeah.
So always a pleasure. And I thought the kids, the 2 main kids, were good. And also Zachary Levi did a good job of playing the kid as an adult. So if you basically it's big with superheroes effectively.
Yeah, basically.
But yeah, it's great fun, and the disc's fantastic. Picture quality is fantastic. The use of HDR is really good because obviously, particularly things like the Shazam, the logo on the front of it, because there's lots of primary colors in this, lots of lightning and things like that, things that lend themselves to HDR. The Dolby Atmos soundtrack is also really good, and they used it quite cleverly. They kind of downplay it when he's the kid, and then they amp it up when he's Shazam. Yeah. So that I thought was fantastic. It was a really good disc. Recommend it highly.
Yeah, I saw it in IMAX and it was absolutely fantastic. Really, really good. So yeah, good stuff.
Iron Man trilogy. Obviously, if you don't own Iron Man on if you don't own it at all, buy
any of the many formats.
Yeah, but this is obviously the 4K release with an Atmos soundtracks on all 3 and new HDR passes on the image. This was released. These were released in Germany, I think, last year, but this is the proper official and superior release from Disney, from Marvel. So I've got that. It should be arriving this week, actually. I haven't got it yet. And Pet Sematary, the remake of the Stephen King novel, which I've not seen, so I can't comment really on Pet Sematary. I've seen the original, I've read the book, but I haven't seen the new version.
If you go to the homepage, click on reviews, film reviews, Simon has already reviewed this disc, so the review is up there. It's not on the homepage anymore, but it's still there.
Also coming out on Blu-ray, Shazam and Pet Sematary, of course, but other things coming out. Being John Malkovich on Arrow. Great film. Love Being John Malkovich. Very funny. Batman Hush, which is one of our prizes currently running. The Incident on Eureka, not familiar with that. And Used Cars, which was the second film written and directed by Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale. And that's on Eureka too. And it's a film I really like. It's got Kurt Russell in the lead, and it's a foul-mouthed comedy about used car dealers, and it's very funny. And I recommend it if you haven't seen it.
Right, so that's disc-wise. Streaming-wise, what's coming out this week, Steve?
Oh, big one this week. I'm really looking forward to this. It's Mindhunter Season 2. I thought
even I'm up to snuff on this one, so I'm quite looking forward to this.
I watched it the second time quite recently because I enjoyed it so much. I've also read the book it's based on. And Season 2, basically Season 2 will largely revolve around the Atlanta child murders, which was a real thing. And also in this season, interestingly, they have an episode where they interview Charles Manson in prison, and the actor playing Charles Manson in Mindhunter Season 2 is the same actor playing Charles Manson in Once Upon in Hollywood. So
he's there. Not worried about being typecast, but he is presumably a very good type Charles Manson.
But yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to this one. It's 8 episodes, I think, and 4 of them, the first 2 and the last 2, are directed by David Fincher. Anything with Fincher directing is always worth the price of admission, in my opinion. And having had an insight into what goes on behind the scenes in this production from our trip to New York a couple of months ago, this is it's a really great looking series, shot in 4K, actually shot in 8K, finished in 4K. And yeah, I really can't wait for this. I think I shall be binging this over the weekend.
Okay, good stuff.
Ooh, bold words.
So, once again, we've managed to get to the end of the podcast where we can have some time to talk about the last subject. We're getting quite good at this.
Steady.
Getting slick. There was a really quite interesting thread. It's a shame that Kaz is not on the podcast, because obviously Kaz was taking quite a bit of interest in this subject matter. Somebody asked a question, films that don't exist that you would like to see. And that was the only question that was asked. So there doesn't seem to be many rules surrounding this question in terms of your answers. And quickly having a quick look through the thread, I was surprised at how many people mentioned sequels. Because I would have thought that with the present climate and everything else, people would be looking for original stuff. Certainly, I'm more inclined to look for original stuff rather than sequels, because I think we're sequeled out. I think anything that I was going to say Disney, but Disney is Hollywood nowadays. Anything that Hollywood thinks that is going to make money, they're going to make a film out of. So things like Back to the Future Part 4, that just would not work. Leave it as it is. It's a trilogy, and don't remake it either.
Well, actually, interestingly, Robert Zemeckis has said that as long as he's alive, there will not be a remake.
Good.
Which is good. Yeah, they got it. The first film is as close to cinematic perfection as you're likely to find it, with a screenplay like a finely crafted Swiss watch.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could. You can't make better than that. So just leave it alone.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's even taught in some of the film schools and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
the
screenplay is incredible.
Yeah.
It's just there's no. It's superb. I think there's room for remakes. If particularly if they weren't particularly great films the first time around, or you just think, and I know some people have listed a few on the thread that are remakes that are supposed to have certainly been mooted for some time now, but haven't actually happened, like The Black Hole being remade, or Logan's Run.
Yeah, I noticed Lucas's King mentioned these, didn't
he? Yeah.
And
also, he mentioned a couple of films that I know have been mentioned as possible adaptations of novels, Rendezvous with Rama and Consider Phlebas, both of which I would quite like to see as well. So I'm in agreement with him there. I don't want to see any more Alien films. I was happy with Alien and Aliens, and I'm just going to leave it at that. The rest of them are all awful.
Yeah. I think another thing that we've learned over the last couple of decades is that prequels don't work. If you know what the outcome of the story is later on, like Solo, like the prequel trilogy, like
the only prequel I've seen recently that I did enjoy, and I thought not only worked but enhanced the film that came after it, was Rogue One.
Yeah, okay, I will agree with you there. Yeah.
And also, technically, it's a prequel, although it's not obvious until the end of the film. But also, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is technically a prequel to A Fistful of Dollars. Yeah. But otherwise, you're right. Prequels inherently have the issue of that you know how it ends, and therefore there's no drama.
I think the thing that made Rogue One work was that it was characters that we're not familiar with, and we didn't know their destinies. So even though we knew it was running into something, we didn't know actually what was going to happen to them till the end. So there was the whole drama was there. You were looking for them, you were rooting for them. So whereas I think,
and it means that when you watch Star Wars, you know what they went through to get those bloody plans.
Exactly, you know how important it is.
It's more important that Luke and the rest of them get the plans to the rebellion, having sacrificed so much in the first place.
I noticed there's a Charlie's Angels coming along.
That's out now in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Hats off to the person that's gone that they want to see the Fantastic Four versus the Guildford Four. I mean, I don't know how much of an actual draw that would be, but I hats off. That's funny. I like that.
I know our own Greg Hook said True Lies 2. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there, but True Lies was definitely a film of its time. And
pre 9/11.
Yeah.
You don't joke about terrorists.
Yeah.
You could do it, and that's one of the reasons why True Lies hasn't been had any kind of release. It was on DVD before 9/11. It hasn't been released since. It hasn't been a DVD re-release. It hasn't been a Blu-ray release. It's largely been, and I think partly because it was just felt to be in poor taste. Post 9/11. Obviously, I know that they've been doing they've done a restoration and it's meant to be coming out, but then so's The Abyss, and I'd bloody kill for that. But I think that's probably one. Anyway, look at Schwarzenegger; he's ancient now; he can barely stand.
Yeah, but what else was there in? Oh, Flash Gordon.
Isn't the
apparently Taika Waititi? Hang on, Taika. I can't pronounce his name now. Taika Waititi. That's right. He's working on a Flash Gordon TV series. Okay. And to be perfectly honest, Thor Ragnarok was basically Flash Gordon.
Was blatantly. Yeah. You know, it just toned down the amount of Queen in it, so you know, it was fair enough.
But again, coming back to the thing though, there was a lot of things with sequels, and what could we look at that's maybe original, in terms of books or TV series or
given
things
where we are with international relations at the moment, I think it would be hilarious and at the same time brilliant if it was done properly to do a film version of Red Storm Rising, set as in 1987 and so on and so forth, because what the world needs now is just a little bit of patriotic fluff to just amp up some global tensions a bit further. Be interesting to see how that does in the Chinese market as well. That would be good.
I'll tell you what I'd love to see some big budget film versions of the Flashman books, and as politically incorrect as they can possibly be.
Do you know what? Actually, you could probably. I would argue that they're better suited to be done a series on streaming services.
Yeah, that would be true. Yeah, actually, I kind of forget these days when you're talking about adaptations. A lot of the time, particularly with novels, they are better adapted by a TV streaming service because they've got more time, obviously, to properly adapt it. But also, there's less restrictions because you're not making the film. You're not making it for 14-year-old kids going to the cinema. You haven't got to worry about ratings. And budgets these days on a lot of TV shows are as big as they are on any film. So,
yes.
Imagine a sort of, a Netflix or an Amazon series of Flashmen with, but really, really honestly true to the novels. Be brilliant.
Could have some mileage. I would say, I know you were saying not a sequel, but when we say a sequel, this is more of a continued exploration of the universe. Having been, it has to be said, I wasn't falling over myself for Fury Road to be made, but having seen Fury Road, George Miller's got another one in him, and it was just so astonishingly out there. I'd like another helping of that universe.
Can I be honest and say that I didn't really think it was all that. Visually, it looked spectacular and so on, but
no. Let's look at the plot. Some people drive somewhere and then drive back again.
The way they came.
Yeah,
but to be honest, none of the films have ever exactly been over. But it has always been about the world that's been built, and it is actually a surprising. It is. I mean, obviously, ignoring the fact that when confronted with severe shortages of fuel and ammunition, building a society built around guns and cars is its own way a bit weird. But I liked it so much. Even if it was smaller scale and more centered around Tom Hardy. I mean, obviously, the fact that Tom Hardy can't drive might be more of a problem if it focused more on him, but nevertheless, I'd love it. I'd make no bones about that.
Right, so here's one for you, Ed. We've had some really quite decent biopics recently for music biopics. Bohemian Rhapsody, Elton John, all that kind of thing. Who would you pick for a biopic, music-wise?
Oh dear. Do you know what? Small budget, and done entirely as a British thing. Nick Drake would be fascinating. It could be done beautifully, although so little is known about Nick Drake with retrospect that it's hard to work out how accurate it would be. But the story of the man is quite compelling. And then
I got one.
Go on.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what would be a brilliant film: The Life of Marvin Gaye. I've read the book called Divided Soul about his life, and there's so much in there. I mean, aside from the fact he was a genius, it ends with him being shot by his own dad, cross-dresser. His one of the women, I can't remember her name now, but there was a singer he worked with a lot and did duets with. She literally died in his arms on stage, and he didn't tour again after that for years, and then had a comeback show. And there's a photograph of him in the book the day before the day of the show before he goes on stage, and you could literally see the fear in his eyes. There's tons.
No, you're right. That would be actually that could be done with the right.
Done right. That could be a brilliant film. I think.
Wheel Don Glover out again for that, possibly.
Donald Glover would be awesome.
I know, that's the thing.
Oh, I got to pitch that.
Make sure you don't write the email like coming across as crazy fan person. Just do it.
Donald Glover as Marvin Gaye. I would kill to see that film.
Well, just outline it and send it off. Yeah. See who picks it up.
So I can option the book Divided Soul.
After in terms of in terms of solid, I have to say, quite rewatchable. In terms of the work that Ron Howard did with Rush, can you imagine doing something similar but with Group B?
That'd be an interesting biopic type thing. That could potentially
work quite. That could work quite nice because. I mean, let's face it.
Sorry, what's Group B?
Group B was the
rally. That's incredibly dangerous rallying in the 1980s.
That's when the rule book was basically written up, and you could have as powerful a car as you want. It was after the 4-wheel drive, so Audi came in with 4-wheel drive and dominated, and then everybody else thought, "Oh, to hell with it, we all want a piece of this," and basically they started throwing massive horsepower into cars, and when these cars crashed, they tended to blow up and cook the people in them.
But it's not just that, Steve. I mean, in terms, you look at the footage of the spectators in proximity. When Peugeot was at the Rally of Portugal in 1985, at one of the service intervals, they found a severed finger in the air intake of one of the cars. That's how close.
And when you see the footage, like the grease rallies and that kind of thing, and they're like millimetres from the cars that are going through at 120 miles an hour sideways.
Yeah, and if you did a decent job of it, people would assume it had been embellished. You'd probably at the credits actually have to show the real thing to demonstrate that there's no actual dramatic license inherent in this. Yeah. And you could do it again. It comes down to picking the right actors, having someone on board that gave a shit about it. But again, you could make a great film out of that. I mean, there are rivalries. There's rivalries at manufacturers, and there's the sheer, the drivers who survived it admitting, years later that if one of them had stuck their hands up and gone, "This is insanity, and we're all going to die," but it actually took the death of two of them before people went, and also the death of a bunch of spectators as well. Yeah. It wouldn't just be noise and explosions. There's a psychological edge to it as well that could be explored, could be turned into and also could be turned into a nice serviceable sub 2 hour film, which I think is important. It wouldn't be a monster.
There was one I always wanted made, and it's now been made, and I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen the trailer and it looks like it's terrible, and that was the John DeLorean story. John Z. DeLorean, because you have to look at the background of that and how he tricked the British government into all that money and to build the car and all, and there's fantastic drama there, I'm sure, but they've done it as this sort of documentary type film type biopic type thing, and it looks terrible. So looks like that's a bit of a mess, which is a shame because I think that as a story is pretty fascinating stuff, to be honest. How this guy went from being an absolute genius in the car world to being caught by the FBI.
To arresting cocaine.
It's pretty obvious that the guy was set up. It's pretty obvious that it was a big setup and all the rest of it. But, it absolutely destroyed the guy after that. And I think there's lots of drama there. But, no, unfortunately, it's been made this year and it doesn't look good.
There's the, later, towards the end of this year, you got Ford versus Ferrari.
Absolutely looking forward to that. That'll be spectacular.
I think you could probably write the plot on the back of a stamp and have really good the actors as well.
Yeah, there's not much of a plot. It's just
I don't care. It's just noisy.
Ford said, "Ford, we're going to buy Ferrari." Ferrari turned around and said, "No, we're not for sale." And then Ford said, "Right, well, we're going to show you that we're better than you."
Sucks to be you.
And actually went out and did it. Fantastic.
I mean, actually, if we're looking for big historical things, we've covered lots of the Second World War, some of it with some excellent films. If you had the money to do it, a film about the Kursk offensive in 1943, it would just look unbelievable. If you actually read the
sheer number of tanks involved,
100 tanks in a space the size of one large field having an all-out fight to the finish at 0 range. And you think, again, come on, that can't. And then you actually think, oh Christ Almighty! And what is interesting is where I had long thought, how on earth do you do that? Because it's Germans and Russians and so on and so forth. Having watched Chernobyl, where everybody ditched the idea of having an accent and they just talked, I think actually could work. It's one of those things, you just acknowledge that people aren't, if you're going to shoot it in the West, you aren't going to find enough Germans and Russians who are bilingual.
Yeah, I mean, I think the approach to that is, and it's been done a few times in films, is that as you close in on the characters, they're talking in the native tongue with subtitles,
that's the Red October thing.
And then it changes.
Slightly underwhelmed by Sean Connery, but
yeah,
but yeah. It's, I mean, actually, on the subject of Sean Connery, you're talking about bad films. I think the damage has been done and no one will ever attempt. But to remake The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen not shit, I'd watch that.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Don't know. I've read. I had to read that book at school. I don't get that excited about the book. So I guess in turn I don't get that excited about the film.
Yeah, and I think that the problem with these things is that the films that already exist, there's quite a bit of love for them. Like you mentioned in The Black Hole, a lot of people love that film.
It's not a great film, though.
It's not a great film, but people like it.
I like it, but I'll admit it's not a great film.
The stuff there that when you see it first of all, and you think, yeah, that'd be great, like something like Buck Rogers, but then you think, that's really of its time, though, isn't it? Really, Buck Rogers.
If it hasn't got Erin Gray in it,
exactly.
I don't want to see it.
Yeah, and Tweaky.
Someone here on Thread has asked for a live-action Banana Man film, and I will say I'd watch that. I'd make a journey to the cinema. Having seen Peter Serafinowicz as the Tick, he'd be an amazing Banana Man. I'd watch that. That would be good.
Yeah. Now, I'll just mention Mr. Ben 2475. He's put a whole list in this thread, and actually looking through the list, there's some stuff that you think, and there's other things that just would not work whatsoever.
What, a live-action Thundercats film?
I would have liked to have seen a sequel to Carl Urban's Judge Dredd film.
No, I agree with that.
Because I really enjoyed that, and they are doing
enough to get away with it.
They are doing a TV series, apparently, Dread Mega City 1. But there's tons of characters from 2000 AD that I'd love to see get film versions, like Rogue Trooper and Strong Team Dog, Dan Dare, even maybe. That's been mooted for decades. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of potential there. And I'm amazed that that hasn't been mined. Apart from Dread, they haven't done more of it. Robusters, anything like that would be good as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I know someone's already hit back. We're going a Supergran movie. No, I'm not sure about that.
I think it was Greg that mentioned Supergran and Super Ted. Supergran was set in the Northeast England, wasn't it? Geordie accent.
I think we're long overdue for a live-action version of Hong Kong Phooey.
Yeah, good luck. Well, to be honest, I was about to say it's not the dumbest. Let's face it, there have been so many dumb ideas that we've been subjected to recently that it doesn't matter. Compared to that, a Thundercats movie sounds like a fucking Oscar winner. So,
basically, Avatar was borderline Thundercats live action.
No, that was Fern Gully.
Fern Gully,
yeah.
Mixed with Thundercats.
I guess the reality is, though, if you want to know what's coming in the next decade, just go and look at the Disney vaults, and they will be remaking everything in the Disney vaults.
The Black Hole is a Disney film, so where's that one?
Yeah,
for a start.
Yeah. So if you've got suggestions, films that don't exist that you'd like to see that we haven't covered here or isn't covered in the thread already, and the thread is in the movie forum, and there's 136 replies so far, but if you want to add, you can go and add to that thread or add it to the podcast thread underneath this podcast. But that's it for this edition of the podcast. My thanks to Steve Withers.
Charlie, don't surf.
And Ed Selley.
Crawling, slithering along the edge of a straight razor and surviving.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and videos, plus why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. Also, why not head over to our YouTube channel for the latest videos on product launches and reviews, and feel free to subscribe while you're there. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.